man came over to me and he says, "Hey, tell me, I heard you over there talking about the free. Just tell me a little bit more about what you're talking about." So I'm on my bullhorn, preaching a little bit more about him. And then he stops me and he's like, "Hey," and he shows me his ring. And I didn't really pay attention, but he's telling me it's a 32nd degree ring. And he says, "Just one thing, don't F with the free."
They have far more reach and far more power and authority in this world and in our legal system and in politics than what people want to accept. I'm alive. I think I need to do some squats, y'all. I've been gone a while, so hello. Yeah, one of my clients unfortunately passed away, which is very sad, and my shower fell apart. So how's life been treating y'all? So this video popped up in my feed and I thought it was absolutely bonkers, okay? This guy's name is Jeremiah Cohen, and he's a devout Catholic. And by devout, I mean that he gets a little uppity, about anybody who even remotely starts questioning Catholicism. I understand being defensive about your denomination. I get it. However, I will say that, God tells us to be devoted to seeking out the Father through his son, Jesus, not being solely devoted to a church. So that's all I'm going to say. I'm just going to keep the rest to myself.
Hello, everyone. I haven't updated anyone in a while because I've been in jail for the last 4 months. On December 11th of 2025, a family member contacted me in the morning on social media and told me that my mother is in hospice care and that I should go visit her. And so I kind of dropped everything, got in my van, went to go visit her that day, and have been in jail ever since. I showed up that day. There was a man, he was like 6'9". His name's Adam as well. And I come in and I'm going to the receptionist. I noticed him because he's looking at me and he's typing away on his phone. And I go up to her and I say, I'm Adam, and I'm here to see my mother, Marlene. And I'm looking over at this man again, and he's like looking over at me smirking and still typing. And he walks over kind of behind the desk area and says he's not allowed to see her. Never addresses me, just looking down his phone, looking at her, completely uninterested, just kind of like not there. And I sit there, I stand there in the hallway.
I've known people who actually will do that to you. They are some of the rudest people on the planet.
For a couple of minutes, just waiting to see what's going on, I say, "Hey, I'm going to go sit down on this couch over here while this all gets figured out." And I'm hanging out on this couch for a couple of minutes. And eventually I say to Adam, I say, "Hey, Adam, do you have a mother?" And he didn't answer me. And then I repeated it and I said, do you have a mother at all? And then he turns and very brashly says, "What the F does that have to do with anything? I told you to go outside." And I'm like, first of all, I'm like, "No, you didn't tell me to go outside." So I hop up. Right before I leave to go outside, I shout down the hall. I said, "My name is Adam Tebby. I'm here to see my mother, Marlene Tebby." And then I walk out and I stand out front.
I've seen the first few minutes of this as far as whenever he got to jail. It gets a lot weirder. It gets a lot weirder.
And I'm kind of looking up at the sky. It's a cold day. I'm crying at this point because I don't know what the hell's going on. It's like nothing in my life seems to ever work out, even though I know I'm being refined by the Lord. I'm noticing that there's all these staff members and orderlies lining up the hallway now inside. And I'm like, I kind of peek my head in this kind of area between two double doors before you actually enter. And I kind of put my foot in and I say, "Hey, listen, it's cold out. Can I stand in here while we figure out what's going on here?" And he shouts, and I said, I'm getting to the point where I might need to call cops to do a welfare check to make sure that my mother's okay. And he said, "The cops are already coming. You're trespassed." And I'm like, that's the first time I've heard that I'm trespassed. And so I hop, because I've been, trespassing's been their favorite one, the last 2 times as well. And so.
Okay, so here's something that I've already noticed since this guy has started telling his story. Like, if this happened to me, I think I would have been a little more specific about the whole trespassing thing. Because, like, look, when I'm telling a story, I even, and he has a little bit, but I usually include my surroundings, when I'm recalling an event, right? Like, now I'm not saying that everybody needs to, or that everybody does, but it's something that I've noticed that a lot of us do when we're pulling our story from our memory, right? From a story, something that we've experienced. But it just doesn't make much sense to me. I feel like there's some details missing as to what actually happened whenever he walked in and started, actually had this conversation with the orderlies and the people at the facility.
I'm like, okay. So I'm like, I know better enough to just go. and I hop in my van and I drive to St. Mary's Church in Arnheim, Ohio, which is where kind of my journey began. St. Mary has a lot to do with some of the things I've been through. Maybe one day I'll be brave enough to talk about all that. Although the courts would like to use it against me for mental incompetency to face trial because they don't acknowledge anything spiritual, let alone Christianity. Let alone how the heavens sometimes can interact with people. And I walk in the double doors, I grab a rosary that's hanging on the wall because I like to give them out to the homeless. Actually, I gave it to a homeless guy today who was hanging out in the Milford area. And I go into the church, and this isn't the first time I've done this, where I stand in the sanctuary. It's empty, but it's a place where the sanctuary is open, and I just start yelling at the Lord. Not just sort of exacerbated. Like, why am I going through all this? What's going on? And after a few minutes of that, I'm like, okay, I'm good. I'll go. And as I walk out, there's a cop waiting for me, and we get to talking, and I get arrested and taken to Brown County Jail.
Okay, so you see what I'm saying? Like, I feel like there's some context here that we're missing. Him yelling in the sanctuary could have actually been the reason. And I'm not going to say that the primary reason, but one of the reasons as to why they thought that there was something wrong with him, maybe. Please like this video and subscribe to the channel because my analytics tell me that over 90% of you guys that are watching my videos are not subscribed to the channel, which isn't a surprise at all because you guys are just a bunch of freeloaders. I'm kidding.
Which is a horrific facility, which we'll get into. And I went to 2 video arraignments. The second one, I believe, was on December 15th. And then that was the last time I saw my public defender on that December 15th video court, where I was trying to tell her, listen, this guy, Adam, made up all kinds. He said I threatened him. Again, he was like the size of Andre the Giant. I went in there and threatened him. Apparently I threatened other staff, all this stuff. And I'd done it before. And it's like, I've never even been to this place before this day. I've been homeless and just kind of trying to survive the whole time. And she talks over me, the judge.
I'm just going to throw it out there that most homeless people are mentally ill or have problems. They do. I'm not, look, it's like, that's a stereotype. No, it's not. It's the truth.
Is uninterested. They're doing their own thing. This is whatever I'm saying. This ain't the time or place for it. And then I don't see her ever again. I was in that facility for over 3 months before I had my next meaningful court appearance after being mentally evaluated 4 times by the court without ever having consulted with an attorney to mount a defense at all.
Okay, now that is crazy. Now, 2 things can be true at once. Like, somebody can be not exactly mentally competent, like completely. They can be, there's something little bit, something going on upstairs a little bit, but also the system or other people are trying to, like the devil's literally working against you and he's sending his minions after you. Both things can be true at the same time. Just keep that in mind.
Was then learning that my own public defender had recommended from day one, essentially, that I be deemed mentally incompetent to stand trial. And I'm like, what is going on? And they had now this state forensic psychologist that had interviewed me, who we'll get into what it was, who deemed me mentally incompetent to face trial. Meanwhile, I had a cellmate while I was in there by the name of Shooter, who would walk around reliving some past trauma in his life, talking to himself and walking in circles, shanking the air, punching the walls, talking about reliving this scenario vocally over and over again. It was, listen, I'm a strong person. I got a strong faith. I've been through the fire before. I know that God's got me, but it was certain there were so many scenarios in there where it was taxing and trying on my spirit. And so,
yeah, I'm sure it was. I'm sure it was. But here's the thing. You don't have to be outwardly doing what your cellmate was doing. You don't have to be outwardly showing, expressing actions like that in order for you to be mentally incompetent to stand trial. I've had 2 mentally ill family members in my life, so I understand that some of what they experience can either be forms of either hallucinations or they simply imagined it happening. So like 60% of it could be true information, but the other 40% would be things that never occurred in reality. And it's difficult to determine which is the 60 and which is the 40, unless you were present yourself for the event, right? But that doesn't take away from the fact that there is a spiritual war going on all around us that we cannot see.
I was cellmates with him for almost a month. And it was a very difficult period. But that man was not deemed incompetent to face trial, mentally incompetent. Nobody was questioning his sanity. But for some reason with me, the powers that be want to paint me this way. That's just the fact. That's the case. And so I was denied. I didn't even learn this until after the 90-day mark, where you're supposed to be afforded a speedy trial, that's what the court was trying to do. And then when I finally came into the physical court, it was just like a clown show. It's like they're literally, I could tell from the faces of everybody in the court, including one of the deputies who'd been witnessing this the whole time, that something stopped. Something was not right about this whole thing, and they knew. And now they're just kind of trying to cover up the poopy in the cat litter. And finally, a friend of mine finally got involved, and they released me today, 4 months later, dropping all charges, but with the caveat. They told my friend, should Adam ever have a felony again, like he did when he was 19 years old, on his record, then the state can now just institutionalize him. We would have the power to do that. I honestly believe that was the whole point of this entire exercise. And so please,
is that even legal? I don't think it is. Well, we're putting on your record basically that if you get another felony, we're going to institutionalize you. Well, it depends on what the felony's for, right?
I disappear, if I go into some facility like that, please, I am not mentally incapable to stand trial. What she said is that I'm logically paranoid, because apparently during that hour session,
both can be true, my brother. You can be logically paranoid. Look, I don't know this man from Adam. None of us do. He does sound very, 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 he talks so similarly to somebody, one of those family members I told you about. Just because you're paranoid doesn't mean they ain't after you. Both can be true.
Told her about when I was preaching at the Georgetown, Ohio courthouse, which has a Masonic lodge right across the street from it. How one day when I was preaching against the Brotherhood about exposing Hollywood and the industry.
Now this is where it gets interesting.
All that. A man, an old.
Yeah, I watched the first 10 minutes of this.
And came over to me and he says, hey, tell me, I heard you over there talking about the free. Just tell me a little bit more about what you're talking about. So I'm on my bullhorn, preaching a little bit more about him. And then he stops me and he's like, hey, and he shows me his ring. And I didn't really pay attention, but he's telling me it's a 32nd degree ring. And he says, just one thing, don't F with the. And, then I got on my bullhorn and was like, since when have I ever been afraid of a and all that stuff? And he goes running off and gets in a nice luxury car and drives off. It was parked right in front of the courthouse. And I told her that. And then I tell her I'm Catholic, and that former popes have written entire encyclicals on about how John Salza has written books. He was a former 32nd degree, and he's a Catholic author who talks about when he came out of law school as a lawyer, he was asked to join the Brotherhood and did, because he was told that it would be advantageous to his legal career, because many of the judges, prosecutors, and defense attorneys are members.
Look, they have far more reach and far more power and authority in this world and in our legal system and in politics than what people want to accept. Even in small towns. I don't know what town he lives in, but he said Brown County. I guess he said Ohio, right? If it's a small town, they have even more pull in small towns. I'm telling you, if you got somebody that's a 32nd degree, I know someone who they were all Masons. Okay, let me just use the term free M's. I'm talking about just some of the people that I grew up with. They could make or break a trial. They could make or break, like if they wanted somebody in jail, they could put somebody in jail and they could hold you there for indefinitely for nothing. I come from a town that was so bad on small town corruption, probably still is. Somebody can just go to a judge and tell him, say, this boy, I don't want him to get out. You better sentence him to 6 months. He broke into my house. Or you better sentence him to a year in prison or a year in jail or whatever. They could make it happen.
The Brotherhood. And so I think at some point I offhand said, honestly, I don't really have a whole lot of, if I'm being honest with you, I don't have much confidence in the court system. Because,
I don't either.
I know kind of some of the things that are behind it. And that was why I was deemed incompetent to face trial, where a man's falsely accusing me of things that never happened. It's just a fantasy bubble in his mind. And the whole time I'm like, I can't wait to get a guy on the stand. And the state would not allow me to, because look, you can read the implications of what I want to say. It was a setup, man.
Okay, so yeah, it was probably a setup, but you told your public defender about the fact that this free M approached you and told you this. That was not a good idea. They're so deeply rooted and ingrained in society that there's no getting them out. So that was your first mistake. I wouldn't have done that.
It was a setup. I was set up. And they want to pretend.
And look, even if you hadn't done that doesn't mean you're scared of them. It just means that you're smart, because it's just going to be worse for you. And it was bad for you because you sat in jail for however many months, 4 months. for however long, you didn't get to contact a lawyer.
Want to pretend like corrupt
And they wanted to make sure that you were mentally incompetent to stand trial. So yeah, I believe that does happen.
and things like that don't exist. Yeah, they do. Yes, they do.
It does
And I've
happen.
been through this enough times now. Dear God, this is my third time going to jail since December 2024, where I gave everything away and started feeding the homeless. And then 6 months later, then God's putting prayers on me to feed, to build a homeless shelter. Then I become homeless 6 months later. And then it has been hardcore.
Okay, I don't know the backstory as to the reasons why he's been locked up 3 times, but sometimes, yeah, it is you. Sometimes it is you.
But I have been going through nothing short of supernatural experiences for quite a while. And to the courts, they cannot acknowledge any of this. I didn't talk to her about much of that stuff at all.
Whenever people that have mental illness do something, and I'm talking about whenever they don't even realize that they're having an episode, or they don't even realize that they appear crazy to somebody else. They'll do things, and then after they do them, they feel like they're completely sane. I don't know if all of what this man experienced was real, or if he's completely lost his marbles, because I did watch his gang stalking video. So yeah. So it's possible that his cornbread ain't done in the middle. It is possible. And look, I poke fun at everybody. If people are upset at my jokes, you'll have to just get over it, because it's all in good fun. I even poke fun at myself because I'm just an idiot flapping my gums on the internet. That's all I am. I'm not the sole authority on nada. Like, not even what I'm going to have for lunch, because I usually change my mind about 16 times before I decide. I do got to lay off them honey buns with my coffee, though, because when I got up this morning, my cheeks were jiggling a little more than usual. And I got up thinking I had gotten a BBL, at some point. And it's like, nope, it's just ass fat. Ass ain't even a curse word. You know that, don't you? Like, it's a derivative of the term jackass, which is a male donkey. They call male donkeys jacks. An ass is just a donkey. That's all it is. The English had to have been behind that, right?
Should know. And he only does bloody card. Stood there with my cash. Bloody hell.
Oh, would you look at that?
It's like, oh, look, a funny woman. Where? And it's just a dude in a wig. Come on, guys. Look, I get that this is a serious topic, but I cannot do this entire video in a serious tone the entire time. Otherwise, I'll want to yeet myself off a cliff just thinking about how terrible our legal system is, and the powers that be who oppress us and are trying to take our lives and freedoms every single day. Okay, so I have to make jokes in between. Now, do you see why I make jokes? Because that ain't funny, honey. That ain't funny at all. This is just how I cope with the awfulness and the evil in the world. So just leave me alone. If there is something going on with him, then I pray that he gets the help that he needs, and we need to genuinely pray for him regardless, okay?
Like, these people, they're just looking for a diagnosis. They'll never recognize a St. Padre Pio. They'll never recognize a St. Therese, right? Or a St.
I'm not saying that saints will never exist again, because God says that they will in the end times. But I don't believe that there are literally any saints alive right now.
Of Assisi, or a Moses talking to a burning bush, or a Paul on the road to Damascus talking to Jesus. They're never going to recognize all that.
That is true, but like I said, I don't believe that.
So I was held for 4 months on a misdemeanor 1, denied right to any count. I literally never talked to a single lawyer about how to mount a defense. No one ever came to me with that. It was the only time I saw a lawyer was when, after that 3-month mark, she came in. Apparently the judge chewed her out a little bit to cover her tracks, and come into me in person and say, I just wanted to explain to you why I recommended that you be deemed incompetent to face trial. Meanwhile, my last 2 cases for Fountain Square with the Rosary and feeding the homeless, and then the Cathedral Basilica of the Assumption in Covington, Kentucky, for a trespass on the parking lot, trying to talk to one of the former bishops there, for having tried to help this homeless man named Kevin across the way, where my own Catholic church they just don't even, down there anyway, they don't appear to understand Matthew 25 or the letter of James. And for a failure to appear in a court appearance, I had to do 30 days there. During none of those cases, no lawyer ever propositioned that I'm incompetent to face trial or nothing. We got together, we talked about what needs to be done, and that was that. Because I'm not incompetent to face trial. Even this forensic psychologist said, yes, he was able to answer all the questions that I had about whether or not he understands what's happening and what he's facing. But he's logically paranoid, based on the fact that I'm telling you, I literally got threatened by a man. It doesn't even matter, because that had nothing to.
Right, and that doesn't matter. Like, it doesn't have anything to do with it, but it does. And I understand what you're saying, bro, but that's why you shouldn't have said anything. If a free Emma ever approaches you again and says anything like that again, don't tell a lawyer, don't tell a judge. Just keep your mouth shut about that part of it, about that aspect of it, because you're just going to dig yourself deeper, and you're going to stay 4 more months in county.
Do with the case. Now, for the last month, so many things happened there. Number one, I was moved all throughout this facility because, so from very, very early on, I started to, Shooter, God bless him, like came up with some of these early prototypes on how to make a rosary with soap that we're provided with. And so with bath towels, threads from bath towels and soap, I started to learn how to make crucifixes with like a plastic spoon and a comb to poke holes into it and make little round beads. And we started to make rosaries for some of the men in the facility. And then I was teaching some of these guys how to pray the rosary and all that. And then one day I got let out into rec with other guys by accident. And a guy who I could tell had the wrong spirit around me at times threatened me that day. And then I went back that morning and all I did was I went beneath my door and I started to tell people about a man named Brother Yun from China who had his legs broken, who walked out of prison. And I was like about a minute into it. Now, meanwhile, this pod is off the chain in terms of loudness, all kinds of perverted talk, all kinds of, do you got drugs when you first come in and all this stuff.
But here's the deal. And when it comes to jail, well, county jail, it's a little different than prison, but I do know for a fact that if you don't take care of that, if you don't nip it in the bud, then that just causes more problems for yourself. That's to my understanding of it from somebody who actually did time.
But for some reason, all of a sudden, the COs come in like gangbusters on me, and they got to take me out. So I just got threatened up front, and then I'm just trying to share a little bit of the Lord, and they take me out of the car. And they take me to a segregation area for a few days. This is Christmas Eve, Christmas. I asked one of the guards, could you please, just as a favor to me, play some Christian worship music on this day of my Lord? And about 10 or 15 minutes later, he turns on WEBN, where it's literally like Ozzy Osbourne, Mr. Crowley plays that night, and all kinds of
The person that I'm talking about that's actually done time has told me don't ask for nothing. Otherwise, the opposite sometimes will be given to you. I'm just saying. I'm talking about especially from the guards.
Metal playing and stuff and loud too. And then there's these guys screaming in all the cells. And I'm like, thank you, And then they put me in this other pod where, dear God, I mean, this is when guys are saying, has Jesus forsaken you on the block to me and all this stuff, hearkening back to when I was at the Justice Center and one of the guards, as I'm praying my rosary, is walking by my cell, says in a mocking tone, is Jesus going to save you? Same spirit, it's just like that movie Fall. It's just happened. It's all around. We're living in like the Antichrist era. We've been living in that era for 2,000 years, but he is coming out in full force. And so,
yeah, we're approaching. I believe that we're literally on the precipice. We're right on the edge of the AC taking center stage here in probably the next 10 years. That's my opinion.
Like people trying to convince me God's given up on me. And like, look at you, you're in jail. All odds are against you.
Look, you're in jail. It ain't gonna be sunshine and rainbows. Especially all these gangsters in there and all these wannabe gangsters is gonna suck. It's gonna suck. And it is good. There is gonna be plenty of demonic behavior going on in there. I can understand where you're coming from, but at the same time, I would have just kept to myself as much as possible. When threats were made, I'd take care of it and do what you gotta do. And the same goes for even women's facilities. You have to take care of threats. And you know what I mean.
And so there I'm in recreation one day, and this young man comes in who you can tell ain't right. And like he locks eyes with me, he brings up, weren't you the guy that got checked on CPOD? And then he threatens to shank me right off the bat. And then I take the shower and he makes some weird.
That's why I said you have to take care of threats, because otherwise it'll escalate.
Joke towards me. And I said, are you talking to me? From inside the thing. And then everybody wants to check me because I just don't listen, man. I'm not going to threaten nobody. I'm not going to get violent with nobody, but I'm not going to let you talk like that to me. I'm going to set the record straight. And then he's hopping up on top of the tables, trying to turn on any kind of movie that starts with like Satan or hell and all that. I go back to my cell. He's walking around the halls doing whatever he wants, coming up to my cell, like, come on out to wreck again. And meanwhile, I'm being told by other guys that he choked out his last cellmate. And so then they moved me from there back to CPOD, where I had my own cell for a couple of weeks. And
as a Christian, I'm going to do whatever I got to do to survive. And I say that boldly. I'm a woman, but if I was in a women's facility, you best believe I'm going to do whatever I got to do to make sure that I'm good for the length of time that I'm there. That's all I'm saying. I don't believe that God expects us to lay down and die like that. He doesn't expect us to not defend ourselves. I don't believe that.
Boy, that was a good time because I stayed in my own cell. I prayed the rosary every day. The most I prayed it one day was 36 times because St. Padre Pio used to pray it 36 times. And I thought, I want to be able to do that. Man, I was floating that day. But I prayed a lot of rosary. I spent a lot of time reading my Bible. I didn't go submitting myself to a lot of
20
the
minutes
negative energy in the place. And in fact, some of the dudes that I had been working with the rosary on switched up on me. That's an interesting sub video that I can make another time on how a young man came onto the pod who essentially was almost like a representative of the devil, who basically, it's like that parable of the seed that gets taken away before it ever takes root. And he was there and took this young man away from what I had been building up with him for a while. And but with like a very Gnostic perspective of Christianity, and also just kind of perverting all the teachings, and very demonized young man. His mother, he was telling me, was a bruja. She sacrificed chickens in her closet and all this. I literally prayed the rosary for him one day in there, and I said, we want to break any curses of witchcraft over him. And he got a nosebleed during that rosary session that we did. And from that point on, he became my enemy. And then this other young man who had been purely praying the rosary up.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and say it. There is not power in an item. There is power in the name of Jesus. That is probably the reason why that happened. If you're speaking Jesus' name, and if God has given you any kind of authority whatsoever to chase out demons or to chase out evil out of anybody, or out of even an object or a home, then that the power is not in that rosary. I'm sorry. It's an item. That is just an object, right? It's in the name of Jesus.
Took it for weeks and had been loving it, started turning on me as well. And I learned some things from that experience. Basically, when a man starts to go the other direction, just let him go. You did your thing. You planted the seeds that need to be planted. At that point, it's all in God's hands, because sometimes the devil comes and takes it away. I can't be that vested in it all. Then they took me, one day they pop in and they just say, you got to move up front with this other guy. So I go into his cell. I lasted one night in there. He knows I'm a Christian. We're talking about that. And he just starts to get so perverted. His back's turned to me and he's like, yeah, I'm into that. Just so you know, I'm into that demonic shit. And I like voodoo and all this stuff. He tells me, and he ain't, but he tells me he's like the founder of Hell's Angels. He literally says like he's Legion. And I'm sitting there like, what is my life anymore? And then he gets up first thing in the morning, goes to the CO and goes like this, and then the CO is looking at me like, what's going on, man? We just can't have it. You just can't go anywhere. Like, I'm the problem. And I'm like, because I had told him in response, I'm like, again, in that scenario too, I'm not threatening or anything else, but I'm like, I'm not afraid of a witch. I'm not afraid of your little voodoo.
See, this is what I'm talking about how you don't know people, and just because they tell you something doesn't make it true. All right. And just because he's sharing his story does not mean that every single solitary word in this video is true. I'm going off of the assumption that it is. I've known people like that, like hail Satan and all this other crap. If they say stuff like that, you're a little special. You need some prayer. You need Jesus.
So then they moved me to B pod, which is a more leisurely, smaller place. There's 2 pods back there. There's a young man who walks around all day on the video calls with nothing but his a towel around his waist and around his hair after he gets a shower, talking to old women who put money on his books. And member of a gang. And one night when I was...
What's funny about that is that there's a lot of dudes like that in jail, that they hit up all these older women, and that's what they do. They extort them, basically. Not blackmail them or anything, but they extort them. They're just like, oh yeah, baby, I'm gonna see you when I get out, and they'll have like 6 women that they're talking to just so they can get, make sure they get their commissary.
Talking about God with another man in the pod, another Christian. He went into my room and wrote 666, the devil, and put an inverted cross over my bed. And I saw it the first time that I think I slept that night, and only saw it the next morning. And I'm sitting there. Now, did I handle it? I handled it the way I handled it. But that first time when this happened, I was fuming in my room. I sat in my room. I prayed for the day. I'm just sitting there like, upset. And then I finally came out and I said, listen, man, whoever did it, just own up to it. I don't care. We can talk about it. Like, just own up to it. And crickets. I know who it was. It was crickets. And then another guy.
Okay. I'm going to say this, and a lot of people are not going to agree with me, because you're going to say, oh yeah, that's easy for you to say because you've never been in jail. I've almost been to jail. That's a story for another day. That was many years ago. That was back when I was an addict. Yeah, it's easy for people to sit there and say, well, you can't let these people get to you, especially whenever your faith is so powerful. If you have that kind of faith in God and in Jesus, then you're not going to let these people get to you. But knowing that you have to spend this length of time around these people, that's all I would do, is pray and be in my Bible. I would try my best to keep my distance and stay away from people and not get in drama. And because that's all it is in jail is drama, constantly, all the time. They act like high schoolers when it comes to talking smack, and that's it. But, it's easy for me to sit here and say that, well, you shouldn't even involve yourself with that. You shouldn't even let this get to you. If these things actually happen to him and it's just time after time after time after time, I can understand. I can understand literally sitting in your room fuming, like he said, and praying. I can understand that.
On the pod, he's like, one guy runs back there because I'm saying this is like a hate crime. This other guy gets real scared. He was my cellmate. And he's like, he gets some nail clippers and just starts scraping it all off the walls, all evidence of it. And another guy, who's another gang member with the other guy, is like, what are you getting upset about, Adam? Like, the Holy Ghost in him is compelling him to remove it now, just mockingly. And I said, why is everybody so clownish about this? And then he got real assertive, and he's like, brother, if I wanted to, I'd beat the living shit out of you, blah, blah, blah. And at that point, I was just like, it's not like I was afraid or anything else like that, but I just beat on the door and I was like, you got to get me out of here. And then I'm blamed again. Tebby, this is jail. Like, we keep having to move you all over the place. Then they take me to Backbeat Pod, where these guys start talking to me, oh, it's not going to be like up there, And it took all of about a week for my cellmate at the time to fill up my entire cell with 666s, writing hell yeah, or, the devil, this kind of stuff. He started writing it all throughout the broader pod too. This young man crashed out twice when I would watch TV because it was a very leisurely pod. One was late at night when Mother Angelica was praying the rosary. Only time I ever heard him get angry about anything on TV. And he crashed out on both of these occasions. And I tried to tell him, I'm like, you realize this is spiritual. This ain't spiritual. It's just too loud.
Okay, let me just say this real quick, because a lot of people don't know that not every jail is like this. Okay, there's plenty of jails. Actually, especially down here in the South, there's plenty of jails around here. I'm not going to say that there are sunshine and rainbows or not, but there's plenty of jails that have Bible study groups, and it's not like this. A couple deputies run the place, around here, like it's nothing. They have plenty of Bible study groups and prayer groups and stuff like that around here, but that's what I'm saying. This is the South. I'm in the Bible Belt. So it's a little different. So I can imagine everywhere else. Yeah, I can imagine things like this happening, and I'm sure it does.
Wow, this kid would be up till 4 or 5 in the morning watching car explosion movies and all that. No, it was spiritual. And then the other night I was praying mass. And so finally one day I told him what I thought. Because after he crashed out on mass at night, when I would be kind enough to wait for everybody to go to bed, and then I'd watch a little bit of EWTN to get what I needed for the day. And he crashes out on it one night, and the next day he's watching whatever he wants all night long. And that next day I told him what I thought. And I told him, because he was a young man of 20 years old who was always talking about how gangster he is and how he does all this, and he's been to Cleveland and he's been to Chicago and all that. And I just told him he's not a gangster. And he said, he couldn't look at me or anything else like that. He's like, I'm not even gonna waste my time on you. And I said, yeah, you're not gonna waste no time on you because you ain't gonna do nothing. I said, and if you did something, I'm not gonna do nothing back to you. But I'm just gonna let you know what I think about how you're a hypocrite, attacking the content that I was trying to watch. And then again, all these guards come in, I'm the problem again. Me?
Yeah, but here's the deal. No. I'm not gonna let somebody attack me and then I'm not gonna do anything. I'm gonna protect myself. Okay. I grew up old school. My parents, my daddy, everybody, we're all old school. You put your hands on me and you're gonna find out. That's just the way it is.
Well, this young man he constantly is going to the court, coming back with all kinds of contraband. All these guys are in there chopping up their meds off the med cart, snorting it up their nose all the time. I'm the problem. And then I get moved from there back to C-Pod, where I was originally. And
which is common.
I'm put in a cell with a camera in the corner, and that's when I start my 23 out of 24 hour lockdowns. And that's how I spent the last month and a half or so of my being there.
Here's what I want to know. Whenever he walked into that jail that first day, how did he act? Was he Mr. Preacher Man and he was shoving Bible verses down everybody's throats? Or was he constantly going up to people and offering to pray for them? Or, you know what I mean? How did he act? What was his behavior? Or did he walk around saying prayers out loud all day? Or did he just try to mind his own business and then this just started happening? I don't know. See, that's what I want to know. I want to know what his demeanor was, what his behavior was whenever he was actually in there. Because it does matter.
The young man who put the inverted cross was later brought into that sea pod, and he would constantly come up to my door, turn off my lights, turn them on when I didn't want them on. He'd be across the hallway saying some of the darkest, most demonic stuff, and that was par for the course. I'd walk down to get my tray in the mornings, and guys would just be, "The power of Satan compels you," or "Hail Satan," all these different things. I'm just like, dude, you know? It was wow, to the point where one of the Christian guards finally had to admit, one of the guys that kept moving me around, he overheard some of it one day, and he's like, "What you talking about now?" Yeah, you think?
Yeah.
And yet, see.
Yeah, but here's the thing. You let it get to you. You can't let the devil get to you. He's gonna play mind games. He's gonna trip you up. He's gonna send people your way. That's what I've learned in my life. You cannot let the devil win. Because every single time you got riled up, it was a little victory for him. Keep that in mind, brother. You can't let him win, because every time you got upset about it, or every time you were fuming in your cell about it, because of the fact that it wasn't water off a duck's back, because people who are comfortable in their faith, who are strong in their faith, you're not going to let it get to you. You're just not. And you're not going to blow up about it. You're just going to let it ride.
I was deemed the problem in jail because I wasn't a gangster. I don't act all criminal like that. I didn't fit in. I'm Holy Spirit filled, and so therefore I get punished. And then
I have a story about that, but that'll be for another video. I don't fit in. There's a lot of places where I didn't fit in, and I was like an outcast, and I was treated very badly.
when I'm on 23 out of 24-hour lockdowns, they start denying me all my religious freedom. Not that they gave you much anyway. 1 hour a week with a Baptist that would come in. So what would a Muslim do? Well, they'd be out of luck. Let alone, could they ever find a Quran in the facility? Absolutely not. All you can find are KJVs too. Men were complaining about how they don't understand the KJV. It was just I asked one of the guards one day about what would happen with the Muslim, and he said, well, all we have to offer them is brother name. No, that is not correct. I'm pretty sure that would not align with federal law. I had a man trying to bring me in Catholic books from the local parishes. They wouldn't let him bring them to me. They just wouldn't. It's simple, like really? You think that these are laden with LSD or something like that? Are you that silly? No, you just like to screw over guys. My last cell for the last month, the base of it leaked sewage water and would develop black mold at the bottom. I still have today, this is my first day out, I've been having breathing problems. I was having breathing problems. My smell would smell funky.
I don't know why it's lagging, y'all.
One young CO came in and took pictures of it, sent it up. I asked him for a follow-up. He's like, I do what I can do, but it's like it goes nowhere. It goes nowhere with the higher-ups. This is Brown County Jail in Brown County, Ohio.
Most of these jail systems, county jail systems, are the higher-ups, they don't care. The wardens don't care. The mayors don't care. The governors usually don't care either.
And then the place floods.
I've heard tons of horror stories of Ohio, so I can imagine.
Constantly with poop and pee water. It's got such an old facility that some of these dumb prisoners who come in there, who talk about absolutely nothing all night long, think it's fun to flood the facility so that everyone's cell can be filled with poop and pee. For what reason? Nobody knows. I think you got to follow the money on that one, because apparently the guy who does all the plumbing fixing each time he comes out charges the county $800 to do it. The last 4 or 5 days that I was there, it happened every single night with the same guy instigating it all, and guards, nobody knows. I'm sitting there thinking, we're surrounded by law enforcement. We're in jail with cameras, which should have audio everywhere too. Gosh, it seems like a real whodunit.
That might be like a scheme going on. I'm sure it is in that particular case. But here's the deal: it happens in a lot of jails. I don't know why they do it either. I don't know. I think they're just not right in the head.
Got it all
they
night
do,
long,
and they do think it's funny.
You know, screaming about it. We're gonna have an FLUDD, a party tonight. Yeah, the same young man, 32, about to turn 33, would talk at night. Like one night he was talking about shooting dope boys down and over the Rhine in the stomach, who were black guys, who he then said, these guys have evolved over time. They're built for it. It's a good place to shoot them. It doesn't. And I'm like, what is this place? And the guards would come in and they'd reward a lot of these guys that are acting like this. And they're out all day long. They get to do whatever they want. They get to watch whatever they want. And here I am, locked down, can't even get my rec time moved from 11 to 12 a.m. to 12 to 1 a.m. so that I could watch EWTN Mass, because they said that they didn't even realize that there's a difference between recreation time and praise and worship time, or religious freedom time. Here's
what he's not understanding. Seriously, he's not understanding this aspect of it. You were disrupting. You were disruptive. And I'll tell you how. Because It seems like you were literally the only Christian in that place. And the devil's minions were all around you. And you were disrupting things. The devil does not like us. He does not like us whatsoever. So you coming in there, you got all their feathers ruffled. And yeah, in a spiritual way, yeah, absolutely. You disrupted them. So yeah.
It's like nothing, they've been doing whatever they want for so long. If they don't perceive any threat to their way of doing things. They just do whatever they want and they make up the rules as they go. And so it got so bad that in the last few weeks that I was there, a Baptist who comes and does a Sunday service used to come and talk to me after it. And he was getting told by the COs that he's not allowed to do one-on-ones with me, which is just like, so you're denying me on all fronts, all this. I could go on with story after story after story.
Yeah, I do know that it's federal law that a part of the Religious Freedom Act, I think, I don't know what the actual law is, but I do know that they're supposed to provide you a way to be able to worship and to have prayer time and all that, and to be able to worship with your own book. But see, here's the thing. But it has to be everybody. If there is true religious freedom in this country, then that means that if somebody wanted a Church of Satan Bible, that they would have to provide it. Just saying. You can't have it. You can't have it both ways. Like, you can't say, oh, well, it's only our religious freedom. No, actually, the law states that all religious freedom.
Just the crazy spiritual warfare in this place. My last night there, the night before, it was all these guys screaming at me on.
I could be talking out of my rear. I don't know. I'd have to look it up.
The hallway. One of the common things, everybody called me preacher man everywhere I went. Hey, preacher man. And
I haven't seen this entire video yet. Preacher man. What did I say just a few minutes ago? So I wonder if he was acting like that.
I'd usually not address it, but sometimes I'd be like, I'll humor it. What's going on? And then they'd be like, hail Satan, or F you, And that was just all the time.
You were disrupting them, yeah.
See, the beauty of it is, I know that the Lord allowed this because I was learning how to deal with my anger. I was learning how to deal with how to endure such persecution. And in the meantime, I'm back there all day reading through the Proverbs, reading through the wisdom of Ben Sirah, or the book of wisdom, which are proverb-like books, and just getting exactly the answers I needed to what was happening to me on a day in, day out basis. Like for one was, these are something simple, but a fool immediately shows his anger while the shrewd conceals his contempt. Man, that one helped me. That's from the wisdom of Ben Sirah. That one helped me so much, right? Reading that, and just a lot of admonitions to guard the tongue and to bide by the tongue and to bear your. And then I'm reading about remembering the 6
That sounds like why you went through it, man. Because you needed help in that area.
The work of mercy in the Catholic Church, bear all your wrongs with patience, and that was a mantra.
If God wants to put you, He's going to put you through it anyway. Like, if it's His will, and you're dealing with something, and you start praying on it, you better get ready. You start praying on something to refine yourself. I need to deal with my anger. I need to deal with this particular sin. Get ready to be tested, because you're gonna be tested.
For me while I'm in there. Sometimes the Spirit of the Lord would overcome me, and I just have to say something. I even addressed that young man that shoots all the dope boys in the belly and stuff, and I was like, have you listened to yourself? That was why I was on the EdSeg. It's because I dared to ask these guys sane questions and stand in truth, rather than, because that's the life I want to live these days. I don't want to live a safe life where I'm a coward and don't say the things that need to be said. I'd rather live in the Spirit where I'm not afraid of death and say true things, like the one that I serve. And so I'm not going to sit around. I didn't care. I knew at this point, I'm surrounded by the enemy everywhere in this facility, literally. I'm under lock and key. The powers of the state have been misused against me. I'm surrounded by all these jackals and hyenas around me. Sometimes literally the whole pod would howl in unison together. And then I read that night Psalm 59 about dogs growling throughout the city, surrounding him. And I'm like, dude, this is the Bible come alive for me, And it's just, but I knew it was an illusion, because for 9 years I've endured this. It was an illusion. I see right through it. The devil is a liar. He wants you to believe he's more. If he's that powerful, dude, you could have taken care of this a long time ago, real quick. But apparently you're not allowed by God to take care of it real quick. So that's a quick update as to where I've been. Number one, thank you. I came out to money on my Cash App, which has been.
Okay, so here's where I land on all this. All right. I'm not going to sit here and call this guy crazy, because spiritual warfare is real. And anybody who's been walking with God for any amount of time knows that, right? But at the same time, not every single aspect of our daily lives is spiritual warfare. Sometimes people are dealing with real mental health struggles. And if that's the case, then I truly hope this man gets the help that he needs, right? But that's where discernment comes in. Because if you can't question something, if you can't test it, and if you can't line it up with scripture, then that's a problem. And I don't care what denomination you claim, because none of us are above being questioned. Not me, not you, and not him. Truth doesn't get offended. Truth stands on its own, right? So whether this is spiritual warfare, mental illness, or some mixture of both, I don't fully know. But I do know this. You better know your Bible. You better stay prayed up and stay grounded. And you better not let somebody else's experience become your doctrine. Let me know what y'all think down in the comments, because I don't think there's really a black and white, cut and dry type of answer for this one. I think it's a little more complicated than that. So anyway, like it if you liked it. Too bad if you didn't. And I'll see you in the next one. Bye.